It's fair to say that Anthem is the dead horse that's been beaten this week in reviews on YouTube, and to an extent rightly so. The game is flawed, it has issues. I've been away over the last couple of days not being able to play Anthem, and I've been sat there thinking, do I really want to make content on this game? Am I making content on Anthem because I enjoy it, or because I have a relatively successful YouTube channel covering the game so far? And I'll be honest, it's a bit of both. I enjoy making Anthem videos. I really enjoyed making the last video that I made going over all of the different masterwork weapons. Granted, it's immediately outdated, but you get my point. But then I actually got to play this weekend, and I had a lot of fun doing so. However, so I'll get back on track with the video. BioWare have done some significant damage to the player base by changing how loot works, so we're going to go over all of that today. While the player base is very annoyed at these changes and what exactly they are, but also a Diablo dev actually posted onto the subreddit some feedback, and it missed everyone. And some of this advice is really good that I think Anthem should definitely follow. To take people right to the start, there were a lot of exploits in the game, basically day one, on how people were going on to higher difficulties, running chests in free play. Well, these changes came in on Friday. I just want to highlight one: chests found in mission changes. Chests found in missions now will have less of a chance to drop higher tiered items. This specifically meant if you were doing a mission, a contract, and you found a chest out in the world by accident, this was also a really good way of finding easy masterwork items, for example. However, these changes, for reasons unknown, increased certain drop rate chances for masterworks, legendaries, for everyone on everything. People were getting more masterworks and legendaries. And then sometime yesterday on Sunday, the thread started coming in saying, hold on, there was a change. We're getting less loot. We spent the weekend getting like 6 to 8 masterworks a stronghold run. Now we're getting 1 or 2 at most. A lot of complaints about the stealth nerf that was happening, to a point where Ben Irving responded, saying, update on what happened here. In our Friday changes, one of the edits we made had the side effect of increasing certain drop chances. This was not intended. Once we identified the problem, we changed it back to how it was before. That was about 11 hours later. It took a little time for that message to make it around internally, and it was never our intent to make changes without being transparent. So it seems fairly straightforward. There was a side effect that more stuff was being dropped, which shouldn't have been. They reverted the change back to what it was before. However, that window of 11 hours or more, it seems, was enough of a time for people to get lots of gear, and from the sounds of it, a lot of people had a lot of fun doing it. I mean, of course, right? Everybody was getting more gear, but there is a much bigger underlying problem that Anthem has, and that's its loot system and how much of a mess it is currently. Now, as I said at the start of this video, I was away this weekend, so I didn't get to experience any of this myself, but I asked a couple of the subscribers from Twitch that I've been playing with, who were grinding out all this time, what they were getting, how it was different, so on and so forth. Mr. Crow says, before patch, I was seeing 3 to 4 masterworks, now I see 1 to 2 in 4 to 5 hours. The problem with loot now is that they so-called made a mistake. I found myself that the loot before the update was way better. The amount of masterworks only makes sense because of the random inscriptions. Right now, I don't feel like grinding at all since there's barely any masterworks and there's still the RNG inscriptions. Now, to take a sidebar really quickly, BioWare are working on these inscriptions to make sure that they coordinate with the gear that they're on. Right, so this is in the works. Because we have seen Reddit threads, for example, of people posting images of a fire elemental weapon, like a flamethrower, having physical damage inscriptions on it for that specific weapon, meaning that that does nothing, that inscription doesn't benefit the gear at all, because random inscriptions can be on any piece of gear, meaning that a lot of stuff just doesn't work. But also a good portion of weapons can have multiple ammo reserves, too many that you can actually physically use, and it just comes off as really boring and mismanaged. Urgama says that pre-nerf I felt loot was pretty consistent. Running a stronghold would net me 4 to 5 masterworks before the boss. The last legendary I saw was 2 days ago. Now the only time that I will see a masterwork is at the end of a dungeon or legendary contract. Rarely I will see one from a chest or monster drop. It just isn't worth grinding it right now because the time and effort put into getting masterworks is not worth what the masterworks do. I know that it will fix it, and I am all of a sudden glad that I have to travel 2 to 3 weeks because right now it's just not worth playing. Right now in endgame we are at the point where we need to see a bunch of masterworks dropping to pray for the best rolls and stats that we want. I'm not even grinding for items anymore at this point, just for various achievements, because I know I'm not going to get any better loot with just how long it takes to get said loot. This is a person that has all of the masterwork abilities and components bar one for the Colossus, but they are still grinding the game and they were before and having a lot of fun. Why? Well, like he said, his focus has gone from getting as good gear as possible to getting the right gear. And this goes seamlessly onto the issues that Diablo 3 had at launch. Like, they had the same exact things, where players were saying, yeah, the game's okay, there's a lot of RNG which kinda ruins it, which again sounds familiar, but mostly that they couldn't find cool items they weren't dropping enough. And as I said, Diablo had similar problems with a really straightforward fix. This is a talk that came from Travis Day, who was one of the lead designers and developers of Diablo 3. He also worked quite a lot on World of Warcraft and how the loot system worked in Vanilla, Wrath of the Lich King, and has been working at Blizzard up until like 2018, I believe. I don't know if he has any involvement, but that's beside the point. As I went over, Diablo had a similar problem. People were kinda happy with the levels of drop rate to begin with, but they were still always complaining that they wanted more gear, right? So around the anniversary of Diablo 3 when Reaper of Souls came out, they put on this event, which had a plus 100% bonus chance for legendary drops. They effectively doubled the rate they would get better gear for a week for the anniversary. Makes sense, you know, it's a nice little thing they added in. But this is the reaction that Travis Day got from the community, and ultimately why they kept this level of drop rate in the game afterwards, and then a little bit more talking about that.
And about 2 days in, I remember sitting at home playing and going like, holy crap, this is going to last for way too long. This should not have been a week. We are gonna get flayed the second we turn this off, because at this point, it's just gonna be the new norm. Like, players are just gonna think this is how the game should work. And the forums were very happy to tell us that this is just how the game should work. So we started having conversations as we were nearing the end of this week. I remember going to our director and lead and saying like, all right, look, this is way higher than anything we wanted previously, but we should just get ahead of this, because this is just gonna be a nightmare the second we disable it. We should just say we're gonna leave it this way forever. It's a gift to the players. Let's make it look like good PR instead of Blizzard, you suck for taking away my items. So we talked it over for about an hour and they agreed. And we said, okay, we're just gonna leave it. Let's make a blog post. Let's tell the players, and I'll go ahead and hotfix the data to coincide with the disabling of the weekend event buff. And we'll just double it again, because why not? Fuck it. So around this time, we stopped getting feedback about I can't find cool items. The drop rates were quadruple what I initially had targeted them at. They were similar to our PTR beta testing levels. And the feedback instead just started becoming, yeah, I found that cool item. Now I'm trying to get a better version of that cool item.
And this picture is currently at the top of the Anthem subreddit. It just completely sings the same tune, right? There's a lot from this hour-long panel with Travis Day here. There was also another one from Diablo a couple of years ago going over similar stuff. So maybe in another video we highlight literally all of the things that Diablo did to fix Diablo 3 that Anthem should honestly do as well to make it a lot better. But you see the branch off. Diablo were like, hey, we increased the drop rate of stuff. We can't change this back. Because people are still having a lot more fun, they're not quickly burning through that content, which was their concern, and it's gone from trying to get good loot to optimizing loot buildouts. And generally people seemed a lot happier. Anthem did the antithesis of that by going, oh, we accidentally raised the drop rate of weapons, let's bring it back down to what it used to be. And people hate that, myself included, because people, as we highlighted with the comments from my subs, nobody wants to play the game. And I found myself yesterday having spare time, playing a little bit of just, you know, doing missions, doing my contracts to get up to a point where I was building up my reputation, but then as soon as I found out that this change was a thing, I stopped playing and I haven't played since. Because the loot system's so broken that there's no point. There's absolutely no point. If I had played when this initial first change came in, I would be getting lots of masterworks, but I'm not getting anything. In fact, if you look at the subreddit, there are dozens of pictures going, oh, this is 150% luck on GM2, and I'm getting this in a chest. Astrocross did a great video going over the fact that he's now farming GM2 strongholds and tried a GM3 one, and he's getting no gear to show for it. I have predominantly a Masterwork Ranger at this point. I think I'm just missing one Masterwork component to finish it off. So now I'm getting to the point where I want to optimize builds and get certain weapons and components and do this and do that. Not to mention that you have the inscriptions in-game that are still bugged, meaning that a lot of this gear that we have at the moment for now is still so poorly optimized that the chance of getting good gear with good stats is crazy low. But there is a bit of a compromise that Anthem can make here. The general basis of their problem is that they had a high chance to get masterwork / legendary loot, but there was a low chance that those stats would be any good, or optimized, we'll say. So that does work in a sense of like, you will get a lot of masterwork loot, but the chance of it actually being good or an improvement to what you have at the moment is kind of slim. But now there's a lower chance of getting loot, loot, but still a low chance of having good stats on that gear, which makes grinding for actual loot terrible. Because inscriptions are so broken at the moment with how they don't tailor to the gear that they're on, they should have kept the drop rate of masterwork abilities high whilst everything has shit inscriptions, right? But then as soon as they put the patch through to fix inscriptions to tailor it towards gear, then that would make sense to reduce the drop rate of masterworks, because those masterworks ultimately will be a lot better now. So it makes you wonder what the Diablo devs here would have done with Anthem if they were in their shoes, or just to hear some of the perspective from them. Well, actually, they did give some. Travis Day, the guy that was in the panel that I just showed you, actually posted to the subreddit a couple of days ago talking about his feedback for the reward structure, the issues that they have, and the ideas that he could suggest. There's a lot in this thread that kind of goes over areas that we haven't really touched on, such as the granularity and difficulty, targeted farming, incentive for doing random strongholds instead of just farming Tyrant Mine, because Temple of the Scar takes a little bit longer and Heart of Rage is just broken at this point. I don't really want to go over areas that we haven't really touched on in this video, does that make sense? So as I said, we may save that for another day, but I did want to talk about the dead inscriptions. Having items roll affixes that are suboptimal is a standard practice for this kind of game, but I feel that there should be a hard distinction made between bad and literally doesn't work. I mean, to be fair, that's fairly obvious, right? Considering this causes a considerable amount of confusion for players learning the game, as their initial assumption is to think anything an item rolled on will work for the item that it's rolled on. But since that isn't true, I assume the design intent was to create a larger spectrum of item power based off the rolls. I would argue that it comes with too many drawbacks. Keeping the spectrum of item power large could easily be accomplished by simply changing the relative weighting of affixes while restricting them to things that actually work on that item. Alternatively, items could have an affix range. Masterwork could roll 2 to 4 or 3 to 4 properties on creation, so there is still the same amount of item variance, but the affixes that show up continually to still work on whatever they're rolled on. It is a bit convoluted in parts, this response, but I'll try and break it down at least how I understand it. He assumed that the design intent was to create a larger spectrum of item power based on the rolls. He says that that's a problem. I think this generally means that you can have a really good piece of gear and each 4 of the inscription slots could be to increase ammo on 4 different weapons. Not only is that a problem because you can only carry 2 weapons at a time, as we've already highlighted, but more the fact that there's no direction that that ability can take you. Let's use the example of World of Warcraft really quickly. You can have a 2-handed weapon in the game that can be used by warriors, paladins, death knights, but because of how the stats work on these abilities, they can be optimized and tailored more towards one of the different classes, even though all of them can use it. So if the weapon has a lot of haste on it, that might be a lot better for the death knight than it would be for a paladin or warrior, just as an example. The game really needs major and minor inscriptions. The minor ones being stuff like drop rate, luck, how much ammo that you get, ammo reserves, whereas the major ones can be tailored towards more playstyle and specific builds that you could potentially run. Let's use a flamethrower, where it would have minor stats of increasing ammo drop rates and stuff like that, but the major affixes and the major inscriptions increase the duration that you can fire your flamethrower for, or just flat out the fire damage that it does itself. It increases the fire damage of everything else in your kit. There's a lot of directions that the devs can take it. Even with one ability, they can use that to tailor and optimize and just create different builds based on these drops. So you could get like a legendary flamethrower drop in that is tailored towards just a flat out fire build. So you then start catering your character towards that kind of style, which keeps you playing and keeps you interested. The inscriptions are confusing, they don't work, which is a complete oversight that is unacceptable, I think. But most importantly, it's just a mess. It needs tailoring, it needs the good stats with minor stats to just add on top, instead of them all being a confusing way that they all get thrown onto any random gear. Now the good news is that this is looking to be changed going off what Darren has been saying on Twitter. Darren is one of the lead designers that does stuff like the masterwork weapons and no doubt works a lot with the inscription people. But I hope they go a step further than just fixing the inscriptions that don't work on certain gear and just make it much more exciting. I don't want another weapon that drops ammo types, because that's boring. I want to increase damage, I want to decrease cooldown, I want to make stupid builds that are ridiculous, but have inscriptions that complement that, instead of trash that just has no effect on how I play my characters. When you have 4 or 5 stats on an item, it's okay if a couple of them are boring and to an extent useless, but it's not okay when all of them are boring and all of them are completely useless. And until inscriptions are optimized and tailored, I know they're 2 words I've been saying a lot, but until then, increase the drop rate back to where it was. Whilst players are dealing with bad stats, let them at least get a good amount of gear that they can at least try and optimize it. Until these two things are fixed, I don't really want to play this game. You know, like, I don't want to go into game and grind out bad drop rates to get bad gear. But I am really curious to hear what you guys have to say other than lol dead game. Let's just try and have an actual discussion on how Anthem can be better instead of, you know, beating a dead horse for money. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon.